Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the self-titled debut EP from Virtual Self. Virtual Self is the newest and most well-known side alias of the American producing mastermind Porter Robinson, an artist that I've been following pretty closely for about 5 years now. I originally discovered Porter Robinson through Knife Party's remix of his song Unison back in 2012. Porter Robinson has gone through a number of different stages as an artist. In his early days, he experimented a lot with dubstep and Moombaton, although I'd say he stuck primarily around the complextro subgenre, which was a genre that he was really leading the pack in. That is until the release of his 2014 debut album Worlds, in which one of the more favored songs on the album, Fellow Feeling, completely put complextro on blast, basically referring to it as repulsive and ugly. While Worlds in itself was kind of Porter Robinson denouncing the rave and EDM scene, he took it a step further earlier this year when he basically disowned most of his discography, including some songs from Worlds, declaring only a mere 10 originals and 1 remix canonical. Now, I tried to not be bothered by this as much as I could, but I definitely was a little bit disturbed at Porter Robinson's attitude toward his past music, considering I think Porter Robinson's music is generally really good across the board. I gotta say, as a Porter Robinson fan, it's been a really hard couple years considering he's only released 2 songs since the release of Worlds, and that's been his remix of The Thrill by Nero, which I was an absolutely huge fan of, and then the song Shelter, which took me a while to get into, but I'd have to say I really do love it at this point. And since his releases have been so scarce over the last couple years, many fans, including myself, assumed that he was going to drop some kind of EP or album this year, and it did happen, just not as Porter Robinson. Seemingly out of nowhere comes the announcement of Porter Robinson's newest alias, Virtual Self, complete with all the mystery and music that we could desire. Except rather than moving forward from the kind of indie-sounding synth-pop music he was doing on Worlds, Porter Robinson has taken a step way back into the late 90s and early 2000s with the sound of Virtual Self. I remember in interviews surrounding the Worlds album, Porter Robinson had made mention that a lot of the album's sound was a tribute to Japanese rhythm games that he played as a child, like Dance Dance Revolution. And with the Virtual Self alias, Porter Robinson has kind of taken a hold of this idea and jumped completely off the deep end with it. I don't even know where to start. When EON Break was released as the first single from this EP, I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't this. Now, I'm definitely not saying that in a bad way, because despite me not doing a track review of it, I actually really loved EON Break. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite singles that have released in 2017. I guess more than anything, I was just surprised to see Porter Robinson doing EDM again, and in a style that really isn't super relevant at this point. Although I would have liked to see Porter Robinson do something a little bit more out there with a new alias, I definitely think he does take this style and look at it kind of retrospectively with new eyes. For example, the first time that I listened to EON Break, I had totally assumed that the first build-up was going to lead into this hard dance, 4 on the floor drop, kind of like a dun 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 dun, if you kind of get my feel on that. But no, it switched things up into a halftime beat, and I think it yielded some pretty cool results. I've got to say though, my absolute favorite part of the track has to be the second drop, where Porter Robinson uses these really off-kilter kind of metal double kick drum elements. And then there's the song's ending, which just confused the heck out of me because it's got this really drastic key change and then just kind of fades out really quickly. But yeah, this song is just an absolute roller coaster ride, and it took me on a ton of turns that I really was not expecting. That being said, I was really excited to see what Porter Robinson was going to bring forward with this new alias. That is until Ghost Voices. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think Ghost Voices is bad, but I guess after EON Break, I kind of expected something a little bit more than just a generic 2000s era trance song with a basic 2010s era house drop, with one simple melody kind of carrying the whole thing and a ton of white noise layered over the top. And I mean, I guess it makes sense that Ghost Voices isn't super similar to EON Break, considering the Virtual Self alias itself is divided into 2 more aliases, with Technic Angel handling EON Break and then Path Selector doing this one. Regardless of that, I was still very excited to see what Porter Robinson was going to bring to us with the Virtual Self EP, and I've got to say, the rest of the EP wasn't really doing as much as EON Break was for me either. And you know, I'll take some of the blame, because maybe I did have my expectations set a little too high because of EON Break, but this is also partially Porter Robinson's fault for giving us the track that was supposed to be the big, epic closer of the EP first as the first single. If I was in charge of the marketing for this, I probably would have put out the first track on the EP, Particle Arts, first, just because it does have a lot of similarities to EON Break, but it isn't quite as epic in a lot of ways. The song definitely follows a bit more of an EDM formula, and I'd say a lot of its influence probably comes from breaks and melodic dubstep. It also follows that same halftime formula that Robinson used on the first drop of EON Break, but instead it's on both drops of this song. And while I will say I really do like this song, just because of the way that this EP was marketed, every time I listen to it, it's like, this is EON Break, but not quite as good. So for me at least, it's really hard to enjoy the song up to its maximum potential. A Angel, aka Become God, is probably the track on the EP that I think steps away from the EDM formula the most. It uses a lot of elements, especially in its synths, from trance music, and then it uses a lot of kind of break-style percussion. Although this was one of the more unique cuts on the EP, its really off-kilter structure and kind of mysterious tone left it feeling more like an interlude to me than a full-fledged song. And Key for me is just a really weird one, mostly because it's just so uncharacteristically happy compared to the rest of the tracks on the EP, which are generally really kind of dark sounding. This track sounds like it could have fit very snug even on Nanabe's album Sunshine Express. And while I do like the use of the double kick again here toward the end of the track, the majority of it, just the drastic shift in tone has me thinking like, why is this track even here? I guess you could say this EP generally came as a disappointment to me. I mean, I think there's one absolutely mind-blowing track here, I think there's one kind of mediocre track, and then every other track I generally liked but had some issues with in some places. I'm fairly middle of the road when it comes to this EP, I'd have to say. Although I will say I'm very excited to see how Virtual Self adapts into a live show. I think he's going to be debuting that really soon, and I'm really hyped to see how that turns out and kind of how this is going to be a big change from the World's Live Tour, which I was personally a big fan of. Anyway, for the Virtual Self self-titled EP, I am probably feeling a light 6 out of 10. If you guys haven't listened to this one yet, I have the Spotify link down in the description, and if you guys have heard it, which I assume most of you have, and most of you have probably been listening to it and enjoying it for a couple weeks now, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes. Hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll catch you later. Peace.